Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for being here, and welcome to the discussion, the report release and the panel discussion by Kriya. So before we move to Hridesh, I thought we'll just give a quick introduction about Kriya because we are a new organization. Kriya, or Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, we are an independent research organization. As the name suggests, we look at energy and air pollution as our core theme for conducting research. So we primarily do air quality modeling, health impact assessments, and we also look at commenting on the current energy trends across the world. Primarily, our focus geography is in Asia. So we have colleagues working in China, Southeast Asia, India, and so on and so forth. So welcome again for this report release and the panel discussion. Before we, I thought I'll introduce the purpose of this report. So we are looking at health and economic impacts of unabated coal power plant emissions in Delhi NCR. Right? The issue of emission standards for thermal power plants does not require any introduction, because it's been a saga that's been going on for 6 years now, and then that by itself is another webinar or something, to discuss what's been happening. But in the current juncture, what's being proposed by Ministry of Power and CEA is specifically alarming for many reasons, which we will discuss. Primarily, I think so far, whatever dilution or extension has been pretty much to get more time or to tweak the numbers here and there, which by itself is problematic, but still manageable, I would say. But what's come out right now as a proposal from CE and Ministry of Power is, in my opinion, to a large extent, would take these emission standards back towards where it was before 2015, right? I think what they're asking would enable retrofitting only to close to 10% of the power plants, and then in very specific conditions based on where their location. So the three primary things that we're going to discuss today are: one, based on what CE is asking, so they want to move towards a location-based emission standards for thermal power plants, right? And then they have come up with IIT Kanpur report, which they claim that substantiates that claim of why we should move towards that particular process. So three main things that we are going to discuss today is: one, Delhi, and then the impacts of Delhi from emissions from power plants are considerably less. Therefore, we need not worry about emissions from coal power, right? Secondly, even if we want to have emission standards for coal power plants, that should be based on locations where power plants are based, and then based on emissions, sulfur dioxide concentrations on the ground. Right. Thirdly, all these things are substantiated based on IIT Kanpur report, and we are going to look at whether that is true. Does the report say that, or it says something else? Those are three primary questions that we're going to address today, and then we have a great panel and a moderator. Hridesh Joshi is going to be moderating today. Thank you for accepting. And he doesn't require introduction. Veteran journalist, years of experience on energy and climate space. Thanks for being here. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nandikesh. Thanks a lot for inviting me and to asking me to moderate this. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to have people, who will be speaking, and people who are attending. As you told about the context about the CA study, and about again delaying the timeline for the for fitting the technology to control the pollution. Kriya has come up with an analysis and a research. I will straight away go to first. I'll introduce other panelists also, along with Sunil, who is a South Asia analyst of Kriya in these issues. We have Karthik Ganeshan from Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We have Nivit Kumar Yadav from CSC, Center for Science and Environment. And we have been with him. He has been with us in many panels, and we have availed his experience. And we have also Ritvik Datta, who runs legal initiative for forest and environment, and is environmental lawyer. So these people will be speaking, and I'll ask Sunil first. And Sunil, could you first run through us the presentation and explain what your study says, and put it in context of what how CA, Central Electricity Authority study. Earlier also we heard that the flaws in its and the conclusion drawn by it. So could you do run through your presentation first?
Thanks, Hridayji. Thank you for the introduction. And as Nandikesh and Hridayji has already mentioned that there have been multiple attempts by Central Electricity Authority as well as different power plant operators over the last 5 to 6 years to dilute the emission standards, and in a way those dilutions have worked out, or those delays to delay the emission standards, and in a way those delays have worked out for them in terms of securing the dilutions. There have been multiple dilutions. First, the dilution of the water consumption norms, which was done in June 2018, after which we had recently in October 2020, so that the NOx norms have been diluted from 300 to 450 for power plants, which were commissioned between 2003 and 2016. So when we look at these delays and dilutions, there were multiple court cases which have been fought. There were lots of different organizations, researchers, which were very vocal about what the impact of these dilutions and these delays would be on the human health and the economy of the country. But recently, as Nandikesh was again mentioning, that in October last year, there was a proposal by Central Electricity Authority, wherein for the first time an argument of doing away with the installation of FGD completely was put forward by CEA, and that proposal basically tells us or asks the power plant operators that in locations where the SO2 concentrations are lesser than 30 microgram, there is no need to install flue gas desulfurization. And that's when we started thinking about really looking into what would that translate into, at least to start with, in terms of power plants in Delhi NCR, and how would it impact, how would the implementation of the norms or non-implementation of the norms would impact the human health and economic cost. And that was the starting point of us starting to work on this report. Today, without going into a lot of background into where do we stand in terms of the implementation, I think Nivit will also go through that, and most of us have been following the coal-based power generation sector over the last 5 to 6 years and know where we are. But if there is a need, I'll also go into those details at the later part of my presentation. But I'll directly jump into the results of the study, and then I'll put them in context to what's been happening today and how do we move ahead. So to start with, we looked at 12 power plants in Delhi NCR's 300 kilometer radius. They total to about 14 gigawatt capacity. Now we all know that there is a power surplus situation in the country, so these power plants are not operated at 100% power load factors. We looked at the 2018 operation, and we tried to build the most comprehensive inventory in terms of the actual operation data of the power plants, as well as the emissions which have been reported by these different power plants in their submissions to the Ministry of Power, Central Electricity Authority, or Central Pollution Control Board. And based on that detailed inventory at each individual unit level, we tried to look into 4 different scenarios in this study. In the first scenario, what we did was we looked at the actual operation of the power plants in 2018, which was at around 54% power load factor. That technically means a power plant which might have had 100 megawatt capacity was only operating at 54 megawatt. So that was one scenario, and what we did in that scenario was also we looked at the existing pollution control technology. So if a power plant had installed FGD such as Mahatma Gandhi power plant in Haryana, then our estimation of the emissions took that into account, and for others we took the existing situation wherein they didn't have flue gas desulfurization installed, and then on top of that, the actual emission reported by them were used to calculate the overall emission load from those power plants. So that was the first scenario. In the second scenario, what we did was we tried to assess the impact of these power plants if these power plants would have been operated at 100% power load factor. And similarly, 2 alternative scenarios were if we implement the 2015 notification to all the power plants, how would that translate into a reduction of health and economic impacts? And that's why we have NS18 scenario, wherein it means new standards implemented on the 2018 operational parameters, which is 54% power load factor. And in the last scenario, a new standards implemented at the full steam, which is 100% power load operation of the power plants. Now, moving into, in this study, what we also did was, rather than taking the normal emission factors, which is done in most of the studies, we try to calculate the emission factors for individual power plants and individual units based on the coal consumption data, based on the power generation data, as well as the emission data and other parameters, stack parameters, boiler characteristics, and all those detailed information. We calculated the emission load for the power plants, and we also knew the electricity generated from those power plants during the period of the study, which is 2018. And based on these two data sets, we calculated emission factors for different pollutants, for SO2, for NOx, for PM as well as mercury. And these emission factors are real world emission factors for these power plants based on 2018 operational parameters. So we don't take the average emission factors in the study. Now, when we got the emission load estimation for the individual units and power plants, and we had the location of the power plants, what we did was we coupled that in CalPUF model with the meteorological parameters, with the wind speed, temperature, humidity, and other precursor gases present, such as ozone and ammonia, into the atmosphere. And based on that, we try to look into or we try to model the incremental air pollution because of operation of these power plants in all four different scenarios. So if we look at 2018 operations, the maximum PM2.5 concentrations, incremental PM2.5 concentrations from these power plants are depicted in the first image on the left hand side topmost corner. And that shows that in many locations around Delhi, Hisar, even Rohtak, Jhajjar, and in northern Punjab, as well as even in Uttarakhand, the concentrations, incremental concentrations, are higher than 10 to 15 microgram of PM2.5 only because of these operation power plants. But when we average it out for the annual year 2018, then the concentration, incremental concentrations, are in the range of 1 to 2 microgram, because the operation of the power plants were at very low power load factor. And similarly, if we implement the new emission standards, the maximum concentration, which was reaching more than 20 microgram, can be reduced to below 8 microgram. And that's the kind of impact which the implementation of emission norms will have on these power plants. We also need to, again, keep reminding ourselves that all these impacts are when we are operating the power plants at a lower power load factor of around 50%. And if the power load factor increases, the incremental concentrations will increase as well. Similarly, we did this for all other pollutants, for SO2, for NOx, as well as mercury as well. And we can clearly see that there are, particularly in case of SO2 and NO2 and NOx, there are clear hotspots around the power plants where the power plants are located. But we also know that these are reactive gases, which within few hours converts to secondary particulates, and that's why we see a lesser dispersion of or smaller hotspots of SO2 and NOx compared to the PM2.5, because when they convert, when the precursor gases convert to PM2.5, the PM2.5 concentration increases in a wider geography than the SO2 concentrations. Now, moving forward, when we did this dispersal modeling, and when we were able to find out the incremental pollutant concentrations, different pollutant concentrations at different grids in the study area, which, like, the study area which we took for this study was 15 into 1500 kilometers centered around Delhi domain. And when we were able to model the incremental pollution for each grid, and then we also had the data from the census. We took the data from census in terms of population density and the age-wise standardized data for those grid cells. And based on different exposure factors and functions, as well as the incremental pollution of different pollutants, we calculated the health impacts of operation of these power plants and the benefit which we'll have if we implement the emission standards. And it was very clear that the implementation of the 2015 norm at the 2018 operational parameters would save around 3,000 lives. It will, and most of those lives saved will come from ischemic heart diseases, stroke, COPDs, as well as lower respiratory infections. Now, the saving of around 3,000 lives was all across the model domain or all across the country. But if we look at only Delhi NCR as a region, then the number of deaths was about 682, and that would reduce by 63% to 342 if we implement the emission standards on 2018 operational parameters. Now, these are the benefits which we get if we implement the norms. Obviously, if we totally shift to cleaner forms of energy, then the entire health burden can be avoided. But we all know that that's not going to be possible in near future. So the best option we have to reduce the health burden from these power plants is to retrofit the power plants, and the numbers are clearly saying that out loud in terms of health benefits which will be achieved from implementation of the norms. Now, moving on to, it's not just the number of deaths or number of lives saved which will result from implementation of the norms. It's also lots of other aspects, such as the asthma room visits will reduce drastically and to the tune of 3,000 asthma room visits in adults per year, and all these numbers are again for 2018 operational parameters. And 2018 year, preterm births will reduce drastically by about 7,000 if we implement the norms. Work absent days will be reduced by about 3.2 million, and COPD cases again will reduce by about 3,000. So there are a lot of other benefits, and just imagine when these kind of health burdens are reduced, the population's efficiency to work and contribute to the economy building of a nation increases. And that's why when we were able to assess these kind of health impacts, we also moved a step forward and looked into quantifying the economic impact of operation of these power plants using the factors to convert the health impacts into economic impacts. And what we found was very striking. We could see that these power plants right now, when they were operating in 2018 at 54% power load factor, they resulted into around 6,700 crore INR in terms of economic loss to the country. And if the emission standards would have been implemented, then this could have been reduced by around 4,200 crores to 2,478 crores. So there is clearly a huge benefit of implementing the emission standards, even in terms of economy, not just in terms of health. And this health burden, when we look at the health burden, this is a big number, and most of the studies which we have done or seen till now basically talks about impact of operational power plants in Delhi NCR on Delhi, because Delhi has always been the center of the discussion nationally as well as internationally, and that's why when we come up with such numbers, either people assume that these numbers are just for Delhi, or they don't even want to accept the numbers because the numbers look too big. And for that, we try to look into bifurcation of these numbers, and we found out that not just the economic impacts but also the health impacts increases with the distance because of conversion of precursor gases to particulates. And we have found that the highest number of highest impact is seen in Uttar Pradesh, where about 2,300 crore rupees loss was incurred because of health impacts from the operation of power plants in Delhi NCR and 300 kilometer radius, followed by Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Delhi, and Haryana. So and all those all these impacts could have been or 63%, at least 63% or 62% of these impacts could have been saved if you would have implemented the emission norms. Now we have seen all these numbers. What does it tell us? And there is also another striking finding of the report, which is even more important to be discussed, is that when we looked at health impacts of operation of these 12 power plants in Delhi NCR and the impact just on Delhi as a state or city boundary or UT boundary, the impact was 218 lives were lost because of operation of these power plants in Delhi. And when we extended the boundary of the region of our interest to Delhi NCR, then the number increased to 682. While when we looked at the overall national figures, the number increased to 4,800. And that's where I would like to emphasize that when we talk about impacts of the power plant, the impacts are not going to be restricted to the local or vicinity of the power plant, or not even to the just the biggest urban center or just the city which you have been talking about. They spread to larger regions, and that's why a regional approach of understanding the impacts of the power plant are very important and required at this stage. Similarly, the other key finding of our research also tells us that 96 to 97% of the total PM 2.5 emitted or incremental pollution exposure to the incremental pollution in the domain in the Delhi NCR region, 96 to 97% of that was contributed by secondary particulate matter. So imagine like this technically means that if there was 100 microgram increase in PM 2.5 concentration at a given location in Delhi NCR, 96% because of operation of these power plants, 96% of that was from secondary particulate formations and not basically from the direct PM 2.5 emissions. And that's a very striking fact, and that that kind of highlights the urgency to control the secondary, the precursor gases which results into secondary particulate formation, which are sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide. Now, moving forward, so these were the kind of main findings of the report. Obviously, there are lots of other details in terms of health impacts as well as economic impact given in the report, state-wise as well as region-wise. But now I would like to put these numbers into perspective in terms of CA's location-based emission standard proposal, wherein if you look at the 5 categories which were given or communicated through the proposal, 3 of them were very clearly saying that FGD is not required, and only the first category where PM2 or SO2 concentrations are higher than 40 microgram were required to install FGD. And then based on their performance, the second category, which is greater than 30 microgram would install. And technically, if we go by that logic, according to their own proposal, there is only 4% of the power plants where SO2 levels, average SO2 levels were above 40 micrograms. And if you look at the maximum concentrations, SO2 concentration, then also it's less than 20%, which technically means that 80% of the power plants would not have to install FGD according to the proposal. Now, when we looked at this proposal and the data which was attached with this proposal for 2018 year, the same proposal also had PM 2.5 and PM 10 data, and that's where CA was kind of misleading the public and the researcher, where they were only focusing on the direct SO2 concentrations and didn't even mention about the fact that out of 617 monitoring, that 617 monitoring station out of 645 which are mentioned at category 3, 4 and 5, which doesn't require FGD installation, they recorded higher PM10 concentration than the ambient air quality standards, which is 60 microgram. And similarly, of the 225 monitoring stations where PM 2.5 data was given in the same proposal as an excess, 202 stations were in category 3, 4 and 5 and had PM 2.5 levels above 40 microgram, which is the national ambient air quality standards. So if these pollutants are higher, and we know that there is a chemistry which functions and which kind of leads to these precursor gases becoming major part of the PM 2.5 exposure to the tune of 96 to 97%, then talking about PM 2.5 and PM 10 by a government agency like CA would have been appreciated, but hiding those facts clearly tells us that the data was manipulated and it was used just to advocate for dilution of the emission norms. So as I mentioned, the concentration, they only concentrated on SO2 and not PM reduction in PM 2.5. But even if we are below 40 microgram reduction or below 60 microgram reduction in PM 2.5 will definitely lead to additional health benefits. And that's why we should go for rectification of the power plants. And this is the last slide. I'll conclude after this. The results of the study shows that the impact of the generation from polluting coal-based power plants locally in Delhi and NCR region are not restricted to Delhi. Addressing hazardous levels of air quality in the region and the country necessitate the consideration of long-range pollution transport. And CAN and Ministry of Power's proposal of location-based prioritization of FGD installation fails to acknowledge both scientific aspect, which governs the pollutant life cycle and impacts of air pollution in long range. Proposals that omit this are also dangerous, not just in terms of what they are saying, but also in terms of the narrative they are setting, which implies that SO2 and NOx are not present in high concentration in our ambient air, and we don't really have to worry about them, and they don't impact public health. So that's the kind of narrative these kind of studies might make, and delay in installing the SO2 and NOx control facility at these power plants is, when we look at the overall number, is leading to more than 13 deaths every day and 19 crore rupees as welfare and foregone labor cost. And all 63% of that can be reduced if we implement the emission standards. So that's from the results of the study, but I'll be happy to talk more about any other aspects of the study or the proposal by CA at a later stage. Over to you, Hridesh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunil. It was a detailed presentation. What I could gather is, what I can add to it is this: India, we have been reporting this is one of the highest top polluter of in terms of SO2 when it comes. Our capital and our 15 out of 20 cities are most polluted. I would like to first bring Karthik here. Karthik, when the situation is such, and your organization you are representing, CEW, has been speaking about the health, cost also. Would you like to speak about the role of regulator and how should we look at it? I mean, if you could take us through that.
Hi, thank you, Hridesh, for bringing me in. Good presentation, Sunil. I think there was a lot of content to digest, so hopefully there'll be more questions on that later. As Hridesh, as you rightly asked, where does the primary bottleneck lie? And we contend that at the end of the day, it's the role of the electricity sector regulator to ensure that power plants that are mandated to install this as per the CEA plan, which have not met the necessary criteria to say that they are they're within the compliance limits, have to go ahead and implement it. Now, what has happened is that most regulators have sort of sat back and have taken the view that this is a risky sort of area that we're getting into, and they've really not been in favor of ensuring that all these plants are actually coming forward with requests, specifically the private sector ones, and in some cases state generators, allowing them to basically take benefit of the pass through of the cost that happens. So, at many levels, this is not just lethargy or apathy on part of, let's say, power plants. I think it'll be unfair to just blame them alone. It is definitely a case of where our regulators, either because they're misinformed or because, they've got, other interests in mind. I mean, at the end of the day, the regulator should be independent and ensure there is, the consumer's welfare is maximized. But in some cases, they do so excessively. And I think, Uttar Pradesh has been, at the front and center of it. I think two of their plants that they refused to sort of, pass the order saying, in principle approval for costs, because, MOP had notified that the cost increase if this, I mean, the new regulations actually meant that this is a this is a change in law clause will actually apply. UPERC did not accept that. So I think this is against Rosa as well as I think Lalitpur, two plants that are run by private sector entities. Ultimately, I think they went to the appellate tribunal, and the appellate tribunal basically came back with a rap on the knuckle saying, you cannot be sort of, be a hindrance in the process, right? So I think finally, of course, it has worked in favor of, the two private sector power plants who will hopefully, now have a clear signal that they can go ahead and install it. Now, we have to, of course, now if every one of these plants has to basically go and wait at the appellate tribunal for, approval and for, finally the case to be resolved, then, the entire purpose of having a regulator who basically, ensures that these, new regulations are met with and that, the citizens' health is safeguarded is completely lost then. The second aspect that that I'd like to highlight in terms of role of regulator is, a lot of these power plants at the end of the day will, let's say, hopefully in the next 3 to 4 years will install this system. It is very important to ensure that they actually function and that the ultimate benefit is being passed on to the people. Now, this means that there has to be a strong monitoring system in place that will ensure that these plants are actually, performing the way they were intended to when these systems were, tendered out and, they were built by whoever at lowest cost. There are obviously already examples of power plants which already have the system, which are presumably getting the fixed cost, passed through by the regulator. It's not very clear because unfortunately those orders, those tariff orders and those, those payments are not, yet there's no transparency on that. But if they're not operating, then effectively they should not be getting that money in the bank account, right? They should be penalized. Now, today there is no provision for any of these plants to actually make their real-time emissions data public, right? It cannot be held in a court of law either. That's another challenge. But it has to be made legally sort of, Ritwik can speak to this point later, but it must be, I think the law must ensure that this can be used as basis for an average citizen or for interested groups to ensure that non-compliant facilities, are not allowed to run, beyond a certain threshold, right? We are given a certain number of days or hours to basically ensure things get working. And after that, you have to basically be penalized and not allowed to run. But unfortunately, again, here, we've gone with the soft penalty of, a few lakh rupees a day for non-compliance, which at the end of the day is a drop in the ocean when compared to the cost that Sunil has highlighted here in his presentation. So we need to see significant changes in the way power plants come out with this emissions data. In fact, the MOP study that, the report that Sunil was, dissecting at the end, it was quite funny to go through it. You'll find that even as the central agency that's responsible, they were not able to get data from the power plants that they solicited this information from, right? That's the tragedy that we are in. They had to make do, I think, with some 35% of the power plants responding to them, right? Even that resulted in a lot of data points, but not all of them cared to do it. So clearly, even the MOP does not have a clue of, what the real-time emissions are. The values that were ultimately showcased were these, annual averages. Annual averages don't do anything for an issue like air pollution, where acute exposure during critical parts of the year could determine the health outcomes at the end of the day, right? So real-time data, right? We have the state of Uttar Pradesh, I'm told, has more monitoring stations in Anpara than the rest of Uttar Pradesh put together around Anpara, because Anpara is such a polluted area. But none of the data from Anpara, for instance, is public today for anybody to use it. So I think driving the transparency and ensuring that the regulator is basically, given the free hand to interpret the law appropriately, given that, all that has green signal has been given by MOP, is perhaps the need of the day. Otherwise, we can, talk about this till the cows come home and unfortunately nothing will change. I don't think, health impact alone is sufficient to make the case. I think empowering the regulator and ensuring that they do their job well is perhaps as important. Thank you, Hridesh.
Thank you very much. I mean, you very important things you brought out, that enforcement one and the real-time, the availability of real-time data, and passing the buck is also a very important thing which you highlighted. Nivit, you have been speaking very passionately about these issues, and I was once discussing with you, and you said even if the timeline is pushed behind, it shouldn't be a free run for everyone. There's some norms should be there. Who is complying, who is not complying, who is inclined to adopt these technologies, and who is reluctant. So I believe you would like to speak on this issue. How can we take? I mean, if people are going to court, and as I noticed here that CEA. is giving advice, who works under Ministry of Power, and saying all these things, and then they are moving to court. And again, we have seen that this this has been happening for a long time. So how can we move forward? Before I go to the eminent lawyer in this panel, can you speak what should be the strategy to discourage people who don't comply with these norms?
Thank you, Idris. I will just quickly go through my slides. Some part Karthik has already shared in his speech. I will go through quickly. See, this is the first slide, talks about the implementation level at the national stage. So now 58% of the plant are non-compliant. When we say non-compliant, it means they do not have system for SO2 reduction. PM and NOx, more or less, we believe they will be able to manage it. Who are lagging behind? It's the state units and the private. The central loan like NTPC and DVC are taking the lead and setting the example. Unfortunately, I do not know why, but the private sectors are lagging behind. This is something related to Delhi. Only 2 plants, one is CLP Jhajjar and NTPC Dadri, have installed the SOx control technology. 6 are under progress and around 4 do not have anything on paper. They are saying tendering and retendering. I do not know what does mean. Let's go through it quickly. In the case of Uttar Pradesh, it is Harduaganj. Now, oh sorry, what happened here? Harduaganj. Again, they have gone for some retendering process. Haryana, Panipat has gone for retendering, and it is like Rajiv Gandhi and this Yamuna Nagar. It's only during the last 1 month they have awarded the tender. And when it comes to Punjab, you can see here there are issue of old thermal power plant, and then they do not know what to do. It is on the paper, it is written retendering, but now what needs to be done with 58% of the plant in the country who are non-compliant? Something has to be done. Non-compliance has to be taken seriously. The first thing which I want to put, again, Karthik has also said a little bit, enhance transparency. Take example of Gantt chart, where CEA puts monthly update on new plant. What is the status, where they are lagging behind, what they are doing to do in next 1 year, 6 months. Everything is on the paper and in a detailed manner. But when you talk about environmental norms, you can look at the table, very little example is provided on the CA website. So I believe along with the economic development, we also need to ensure there is a transparency on environmental data. Because at the end of the day, as Sunil has said, it affects the health of me and you. Next is, something has to be done with the old power plant. When you talk about Delhi NCR, I could list 4 thermal power plants. One is 32-year-old, one is 36, one is 26, and one 121. NTPC Dadri have already installed DSI. But like if in future, the standards are going to make much more stringent, then they will also be in trouble. But good point is, out of 4 plants, NTPC has taken the lead, and something has to be done with the Ropar plant, Panipat plant, and Guru Har Gobind TPS. Another very important thing is, state government needs to organize meeting to resolve techno-commercial issue. What does the state-run TPP says? They says we have issued the tender, but nobody is coming forward. Now, what are the reasons? When we go to the manufacturing side, they are saying they are putting such terms and conditions which cannot be met. Another thing is, which Karthik have shared, the credit worthiness of state-run companies. whether it is state thermal power plant or state discom. Nobody is ready to lend them money for the betterment. So something has to be done. It is the time. Something state government has to do to bring manufacturer, vendor, and GENCOs together to resolve the issue. When they sit together, what will happen? Tender will be awarded on time and timeline will be fixed. What is the deterrence mechanism in the country to impose penalty? Look at this chart. When a thermal power plant is set up in a locality, it comes into an agreement with DISCOM, and DISCOM pays a fixed price to the thermal plant every year, even if thermal power plant is not operating. And this fixed cost is very high, something in the range of 300 crore. And what are the penalties imposed by CPCB? 1.5 crore, 0.75 crore, 63 lakhs. It's like peanut for the thermal power plant. And it is different thing when they are not paying this money. They are going into the court. Now what CPCB has to do? Last year, CPCB imposed penalty on 12 plants. What happened? They all filed case in the court. Now question is, does CPCB have a capacity to go everywhere and fight the case? Is thermal power plant is the only environmental issue left in the country for CPCB to deal with? CPCB don't one or two environmental lawyers. Another mechanism is close down the plant. But when it comes to the thermal power plant, it is not effective or practical. You cannot just close down the thermal power plant. And as Hridesh said, when you talk about giving extension to the thermal power plant, we are saying no. If extension has to be given, it should be given on certain terms and conditions. CSE has done a study, it is called as first run study, where we divided the thermal power plant into 3 categories. Yellow category, which have already awarded the tender for SOx emission and are in the process. Orange category, still no tender have been awarded, and red category, no answer what they are going to do. When it is yellow category, we are saying they are the first run plant. All the electricity should be purchased from them and full fixed charge should be paid to them. Fixed charges are like very important for thermal power plant. In the case of orange category, we are saying buy from them when it is required, but pay only 50% of the fixed cost. And in the case of red category, we are saying no, you cannot buy from red category plant. So if Ministry of Power is going to Supreme Court with a application, give me 2-year extension, it has to be on certain terms and conditions. It cannot be, there cannot be a blanket extension to all the plant. And last thing is, state government has to take certain initiative. Look at this chart. Here I have shown how different states are buying electricity. I am saying dirty electricity. Dirty electricity means plant who are not complying. So like Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan.
So perhaps we have lost him. He'll be back in a moment. Making very important points. Nivit was saying about how we can encourage the plants inclined to comply with the norms and discourage and put penalty and not pay the full charges to the plants not compliant or not showing any inclination. Ritik, this is very important and it's very interesting. I have noticed you have been given chance every time in a panel to speak last. But now as I moderate, I believe that it is very important because, is he back?
Hridesh, there is some connectivity issue.
Okay.
Nivit is just joining.
So, okay, so, he can finish the last...
Yeah, that was his last slide actually. So he wanted...
Okay. He is coming. I think he is keen on finishing right away. So I'll wait for him.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Go on. You finish this thing. Yeah.
Look at this chart. Here I am saying how much dirty power each states are buying. Delhi is buying around 5 to 10% of dirty power. Something all the state government has to do. They have to, it's not about only health of their citizen, it's also health about ordinary Indian. So every state government has to be responsible and take a place that I will buy electricity only from cleaner power plant. And at the end, time has come to have discourse focus only on non-compliance. Okay? We are not against India. We are not part of any FGD lobby, and we are not against thermal power plant. Okay? What is our main concern? Our main concern is non-compliance. And that is the point. And here, the focus sector is thermal power plant. I request Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to look at their mandate. They are mandated to push cleaner environment in the country. And that will only happen if you are not going to accept non-compliance. And at this point of time, it is the non-compliance of thermal power plant which is not acceptable. With that, I would like to conclude here. Thank you, this.
Thank you, Nivet. Thank you, and thank you coming so promptly. You came back very quickly and shows that how passionate you are about this subject. And Ritvik, not losing much time, I just wanted to thank you to be in this panel because I have seen you always, wrapping up it up very well. So, what do we understand, sir? You have been fighting the legal battles in courts, and what is it which is militating against the success? Is it the power, as we are noticing here that the state and the private parties are not working very well. NTPC, though you all are directly and indirectly praising, I have seen NTPC making hydro plants also in my state Uttarakhand and how the things are going there. So we have to keep an eye on that hydropower also. But we are discussing here the thermal power. So what are the main legal battles and what are the problems? Can you just speak on that, sir?
Thank you, Ridesh. It's not easy to wrap up or I'm not summarized to share my view because a lot of important points have already been covered. But coming to few issues, I completely agree with Nivet on the last point on the issue of compliance and non-compliance. But my only concern there is what happens if the standards keep changing so often, and so if levels of NOx keep changing, well, they'll put it at 1,000 and everybody will be complying. So we also have to keep in mind that, the standards keep changing very fast. So we may press for SOx, SO2, we may check for what we have seen with NOx. But if Adani wants the standards to change, well, it changes, even if NTPC meets those standards. And so that is an issue of great concern. We have seen this happening all across, but let's try to look at it in a very realistic form. Today, unfortunately, we are in a system or an institutional framework where there is nobody to actually take the government to task for non-compliance. On my government, I mean individual power plants, whether they are private or whether they are government. Sunil was an applicant in a matter before the now deceased Commission on Air Quality Management. We prepared a petition to file before the Commission on Air Quality Management to show non-compliance for NCR region. It took us fairly about few weeks to find where the commission is. We have never been able to find out. We've deposited in different places with the hope that it will reach. We never heard from them what happened to the complaint, because there is a very specific power, given to the Clean Air Commission, which was to hear public grievances and complaint. When EPCA was formed, it also had the same power. It never heard a complaint in 22 years of its existence. So we thought maybe the new commission would be different, especially because it's NCR is its focus. Well, that complaint we filed the complaint, it never heard it, they never reverted back to us. We prepared an RTI and filed the RTI asking what has happened to our fate. Well, within a week of filing the RTI, the commission itself has been disbanded. So that's the seriousness. Today, the whole issue of emission standards will be monitored by the Supreme Court. After Justice Loku retired, that's the end of the Supreme Court monitoring. The EPCA got disbanded. The new commission is not there. NGT was hearing the matter, but we know what has happened to the NGT also. It's in a limping state of affairs. So we really, if I'm a power company, as again the chart that was shown, the cost of compliance is very high. The cost of compliance is very high. I have to spend more than 1,000 crores to install my FGD to SOX control. The cost of non-compliance is very low. There's nothing. And that also I will not pay, because I can straight away go to the Supreme Court and get a stay order on a very strong legal ground that the Pollution Control Board has no power to impose a fine. They've been imposing a fine, and I just need to cite a law saying that where do the Pollution Control Board, they have the power to issue directions to stop my electricity, water, but they don't have the power to impose a fine. So on the legality of it, I can get them stuck for years and years. And that's where it is. So as a power company today, despite a very shocking figure, which, Sunil has presented, it will not really shock anybody. 13 people per day is that because no doctor is willing to write that the cause of death is in account of air pollution or because of a power plant, these will all go unaccounted for. And that is how we are. And trust me, the 22 deadline also, they are fairly confident they will cross to 24. The 24 will become 26. So what we today have is only to go before and share largely these kind of data with the public, with the hope that things will change. When the Khurja power plant was approved and we challenged it before the NGT, IIT Delhi gave, Professor Mukesh Khare went and gave data after data, which were completely wrong, which completely gave figures which were unrealistic. And today, even if Khurja complies with everything, it will definitely add up incrementally to the air pollution in NCR region. So somewhere down the line, just like what has happened with vehicles, I think the number of power plants and the issue is also very critical. We need to move to cleaner. Even if there is 100% compliance, I think the incremental pollution load arising from range of activities that happen around the area will push up the level of pollution. That's an issue of concern. And I think we'll have to try to expose what is happening today. And I just want to end that we recently filed a litigation in the NGT on the issue of continuous emission monitoring. And we have also included the requirement that power plants should be connected to make all the information available on the website of the Pollution Control Board. This is what Karthik raised, and I want to just share that we went to the southern bench of the NGT and they've directed the Central Pollution Control Board to respond on this issue, to prepare a chart, because wherever this limited information has been made available for other industries, these are all password protected. It's a problematic one. It's password protected, or it does not have historic data. You can't really do much when you don't know about what is the history, about anything about the past pollution levels, or if it is password protected, or it is at a place where it is impossible for us to locate. So this is where we are, and I hope that we'll be able to collectively push for implementation of the 2015's norms. I think as it exists today, I don't see it being implemented. Delhi buys, as is rightly said, polluted, dirtiest power. New power plants have been approved, despite the fact that almost every state, including Delhi, has officially written to the Ministry of Power saying that it has power surplus and it is surrendering its quota of power. And despite that, you have new power plants coming up. I don't understand, what all, and nobody is willing to actually adjudicate on this issue. That's, I think, the biggest problem. The court looks at the environmental clearance condition. They don't want to look into the viability of a power plant. They don't want to look at the complex issues that surround the health impacts around it. And today, unfortunately, we are in a situation where we still don't have a single judicial finding linking pollution and power plants and the issue of non-compliance with human health. There are remarks made in the passing, but not really real remarks. And this is something we have to address. Thank you.
And that's very important, and that highlights and underlines the role of judiciary. And judges need to be very judicious, and they have to be very humane, and they have to be very considerate about the health of the people. I mean, it is not just technically it's not a physical thing that you are pushing this drone from here to here. It is also about, how it plays around, as Sunil was, and everybody, keeps telling time and again that it's not only about SO2, it's also about how SO2, it plays in the air, and how these pollutants, chemical work, and how it aggravates. So journalists are invited to ask questions. Just tell the name of your first. We are opening this for journalists, and I believe, Sunil, all the comments made by panelists are on record and in this, and they can use it. And you will perhaps share the recording if any journalist wants it. So tell the name and name of your organization, and you can ask your question now. To whom it is directed. You will have to tell this also.
Hello.
Go, Nikhil.
Hi, Ritesh. Thank you. Hi, this is Nikhil Ghanikar here from indiaspin.com. I had a question primarily for Ritvik, and this can be taken by anyone else also in the panel. I found it very interesting of what Ritvik pointed out, that to date, there is no judicial intervention / order as such, which has linked any health impacts of our plants, to the diseases that people suffer because of air pollution. Ritvik, can you please elaborate on this? Whether some of the cases that have been fought in NGT, and what are the remarks that have been passed by NGT on this matter, and whether any other quasi-judicial body also has ever commented on this issue in terms of compensation about the diseases faced by people. For example, say TB that is faced in the Sewri area of Bombay because of the coal storage in the past. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I respond, Ritesh?
Yes. Please go on.
There's been findings so far as coal mining is concerned, especially in case of Chhattisgarh, in respect of Korba. But specifically with regard to the issue of FGD, SO2 control, and all these others, we have not been able to convince the court. That's largely because the court tends to focus on certain very alien issue. First and foremost, they come to their own conclusion about electricity shortage, and that's their own one. Now, when you give data to them saying that actually there's no shortage, they immediately say, well, that's not our domain. But the judgment will say there is an acute shortage of electricity. Second is, even when you look at the case which I was involved in respect of the Khurja power plant, which is in the NCR region in Bulandshahr district, Khurja, very close to Delhi, the whole focus of the case ultimately became only one: is the air ultimately moving in the direction of Delhi or not? Right? And if it's moving the opposite direction, then it doesn't really matter to us. So we tried to tell them that, what's most important is what happens about the people living in Khurja. Does it really affect them? Is it an issue of concern? You have a huge background pollution arising out of the pottery industry that is there. Is that something? There's a huge stubble burning issue that gets aggravated. Is that an issue of concern? Well, their own answer was, as long as the wind is opposite blowing to Delhi, which we could not dispute despite our best effort, well, it should not matter to us. And so far as the figures of death and other concern, it's really unfortunate. The courts have just not been willing to accept, those figures, largely because they don't have expert members who are able to understand air pollution, whether it is in CPCB, which has a dominance of IAS officers, or, State Pollution Control Board, which have Indian Forest Service officers. And you have an NGT, which is filled up with Indian forest officers. Nobody really understands this issue. And as a result, health and health impacts have really been undermined. The only ray of hope was when Justice Lokur was there in the Supreme Court, when he's tried to put in this angle of health somewhere down the line, but those are not substantive judgments that are there. So, and one or two stray incidents like Kadalur and others, where there was an effort by the NGT to actually give a judgment way back 8 years back. Well, the Supreme Court overnight stayed all these orders. So we are back to square one. Somewhere or the other, we have not been successful as much as it's been in the case of vehicles to link up the health issue, largely because they see power plants as something which is distant. So if you close down Badarpur, the problem of NCR is over.
Yeah.
Hi, Hitesh.
Yeah.
My name is Bhaskar. I am a fellow with Land Conflict Watch. I also report on energy and environment. My question is actually a follow-up on what just Ritwik said. Is it that we're finding ourselves in a situation where courts, in a developing country, where courts more and more acting like negotiators between the parties?
You know, the chairperson on the 10 years of NGT said that, I'm not involved in adjudication. I am actually engaged in governance. And to which I responded saying, actually, you've become an arbitrator, and that is completely a wrong approach. It's very unfortunate. And this is not what the court should be doing. It should be adjudicating on an issue. There should be either a yes or no. But if you look at the issue with regard to even the thermal power plant standards, well, the court's role was very simple. There was a standard set, you have to comply. And if you have not complied, what is the punishment that should be meted out? Unfortunately, the court became a forum to extend the deadline. To extend deadlines and to give a range of benefits to the violator. So whether, again, this issue of which Nivit mentioned about it, which ultimately was discussed, this merit order dispatch, compliant and what should be there. These are issues that did come up, but unfortunately, I don't think so. The court is a mechanism or an institution to actually arbitrate on a matter which has technical as well as legal connotation. At the most, they can look at it that, yes, you have violated it, you face the consequence. Unfortunately, that has not happened. And it's purely because of the wrong notion of development that the courts have had in their mind. Deep in their mind, they think, well, if we touch a power plant, well, the whole of India will be, in darkness. And that's the mindset that with which they operate. So the person who raises an issue is said to be a disruptor, and somewhere down the line, their whole attempt is how do we ensure that everything goes on, and little bit tweaking here and there they're willing to do, but not beyond that. So we actually found that even with good judges, we were never able to get a final deadline or a compliance schedule. And the whole NCR, if you see, 90% non-compliance is because of their confidence that when they go back to the Supreme Court, just around 22, they will extend it to 24 as the final time deadline. This final deadline has been going on from 17 onwards, and they will go on forever. I think that's the way. And I think unless we send someone to jail, and that was the purpose of the court, well, they will have to do and stop at that. I don't think so. They need to balance between all these issues.
So we have 10 more minutes, and I want to inform the participants that they can separately also ask questions after this session is over. So if there is any other question, you are welcome to ask, and just tell who is the person your question is directed to.
Hi, I'm Soundaram.
Soundaram.
Center for Science.
Yeah.
There was a table which Sunil presented on the pollution emission load per coal power plant. And Panipat thermal power station had like the least sulfur dioxide gram per kilowatt hour, and Panipat is an old plant. So I was just wondering why it is the factor is very low compared to the rest.
Yeah, Sunil.
Yeah, so that's a very good observation. And if you look in the report, we have also mentioned it as a footnote that the emission data which has been submitted by Panipat thermal power plant, as I mentioned, that most of the for all the power plants, we have taken the emission data submitted by them to CPC, PMOF, CE, or Ministry of Power, and otherwise which we got through RTH. So the data which have been submitted by Panipat thermal power plant, which we got, was very, very less, and we also knew that that's not the correct data which has been submitted by them, and that's why that particular power plant has a footnote saying that the value seems to be very less, and because the emission value per millimeter cube were less when we converted that to emission load and gram per kilowatt hour, that also came out to be less. So yes, the observation is correct, and if you look at the impacts from that power plant, those would be higher than what have been anticipated or calculated in the study. So there was a limitation of, because we wanted to make it more real world, and that's why we just took the values which were submitted by them, even though we had a doubt on the value for that particular power plant.
Hey, Hridesh, this is
Yeah,
Karthik.
please. Yeah, please.
I actually wanted to just respond to a particular point that Ritvik raised, and this is important for us to maybe be cognizant of as we, understand why there's a drag in this. So Ritvik mentioned that, we often talk about shortages in supply, right? And that, apparently there is this, surfeit of supply within the power system today. I think at a high level, it is certainly true that we have a lot of surpluses, and many plants are not running. But we also know that, there is a matter of seasonality, right? There is a matter of, many plants not being available for various reasons. Now, what I think is an important study that is needed, which unfortunately we don't have today, is how adequately well supplied is the system to actually meet, demands in 22, 23, 24, 25. Everybody is doing 20, 30 mein jab 175 gigawatt aa jayega, tab system kaise hoga? Right? What we are not doing is trying to say, what, okay, many of these plants, Nivit mentioned, a whole bunch of plants in Punjab are very old, right? Can Punjab, legitimately go ahead and say, what, I want to decommission these or mothball these, right? Because I know that there is a surfeit of supply outside of my state. I can always, import power from outside, from cleaner plants, for want of a better word. And I will not be at the mercy of a power market where I'll have to pay 7 rupees, 8 rupees a unit. The problem is that confidence nobody is able to give any state entity, because and that requires a completely different sort of aspect of study that's to be carried out. So I know in recent times TERI has come out with a very good study on 2030, how the system will look like. Prayas has, for instance, come out with a study on what I think the demand will be. But I think what our power system folks need, right, is to understand if all these polluting plants were to older polluting plants were to be dismantled or not run, right, do we truly have that surplus, and can we ensure that we actually get power at a reasonable cost? Now, given that that is not there, you will find this mixed messaging, because judges are being fed one sort of messages from maybe a certain group of people, while we have a different sense about that issue. And I think the second point that I'd say is, ultimately, to resolve this issue, we know that there is this thousands of crores worth of investment that's required, which will have to go in. And I think the elephant in the room obviously is the ability of all of these entities to recover this money. I mean, and it keeps going back to this for many issues. I don't want to make this also a platform where we discuss power sector challenges, but that is, of course, at the core of it, right? And unless states recognize that the money that they spend as subsidy, right? Delhi spends 2,800 crores a year on subsidy, right? Like subsidizing electricity for its consumers. Can we basically direct the subsidy in such a way that we're prioritizing health outcomes and not necessarily wasteful consumption, right? We will always be in this position where iska paisa kaise recover hoga.
Right. So I will thank you very much for this. I will take it as your closing remark. And Nivit, could you also please build on this, and can you also summarize whatever today we discussed, and your thoughts on this?
Like, the good point about this today's webinar is that we got the important aspect of human health. Now it is now clubbed with non-compliance. As a non-government organization, we have been following this subject since 2015. Now it is 2020, and I believe this was the time when all the thermal power plants should have awarded the tender. There was no space for any discussion. Unfortunately, 58% plants are not compliant. Okay? And I firmly believe it is not the job of Supreme Court. It is the job of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. They need to sit with Ministry of Power and CA and take a concrete step. In 2018, it was decided 22 will be the deadline. How they can change it?
When they are not doing it, it's job
Let's give,
also to say this.
pardon?
I mean, if the government is not doing, if the executive is not doing, it's job of judiciary to intervene and say, ask that why you are not doing it is a matter of people's health. I mean, the state's responsibility to take care of the people, health of the people.
See, that is different kind of debate, and I believe when it comes to the thematic issue of environment, it should be dealt only by MOEFCC, CPCB, and SPCB. As Ritvik said, if the matter goes to Supreme Court, it should be either yes or no. But everything else has to be decided by MOEFCC. They have to lead the race. They cannot sit behind and say, I don't have any comment.
Right. So, Sunil, your closing remarks on this, on your report and the extrapolation, if you want to make.
So basically, I would like to reiterate what Nivit was saying, that it's the job of the Ministry of Environment and Forest, because they are the guardian of air and environment around us, and it's their responsibility to clean the air, to take a firm stand. And particularly over last 6 years, what we have seen is the Ministry of Power and CA, along with the power plants, are the ones who have been driving the compliance or non-compliance of the emission norms till now. And that has to stop, because if we look at the trajectory and history, it's only been delays and more delays, and those delays led to dilutions. And even now, when we look at CA, I would like to conclude with this one point. CA right now is also trying a two-fork kind of approach, where on the one side they are asking for a delay in the implementation of the norms, and on the other side similarly, parallelly, they are also advocating for a proposal where they just want to do away with installation of FGD at all. So why can't CA or why can't Ministry of Environment and Forest write back to CA and Ministry of Power saying that you make up your mind whether you want to go for dilution or delay? Tell us exactly what do you want, because you have been going back and forth and coming up with lots of different kind of arguments for the delays and dilutions. And looking at your approach and attitude towards implementation, we feel it is time that we take a firm stand for the public health, and we disregard all your proposals, and there will be penalization of power plants which have not awarded the tenders, because it is very, very clear that if anybody has not awarded tender today, in next 2 years, they will not be able to comply or install FGDs, because that's the minimum time required for FGD installation, and all those power plants should be penalized. And as Nivit mentioned, there should be prioritization of purchase of power and paying a fixed cost based on how far they are in terms of compliance to FGD norms.
So before I invite Ritvik for his closing comments, I want to encourage and I want to ask journalists, sorry if we could not give you enough time to ask questions, but you are free to take your questions to the panelists. Sunil, we will share the numbers of panelists, and they are available. And the report is also there in the chat box, and it will be sent to you as I was told by Sunil. Ritvik, final closing comments quickly. On this entire issue, what I believe is, I mean, I will again want to emphasize this. This matter is closely related to health issues. Our public health system is totally, messed up. And this also, we are thinking why people are not concerned about it, why they are so careless, because they are careless because they think, giving one insurance card and insurance policy is enough for health system. Had they been, if they were spending money on public health, they would have, the state would be realizing that not taking care of is, this cost of health is also adding. So could you finally give your comments on this to us?
My point would be very simple, that if we can communicate effectively, despite all the hurdles that we face, that there is a serious price that has been paid by people for not complying with the standards. Because I think somewhere down the line, this NOx, SOx, PM10, PM2.5 and the emission norms seems very distant for average people. How does it impact their health? And I think somewhere down the line, we need to communicate that more effectively, and therefore give it in a form that the simplest of person or the highest, or the person sitting at the highest level is able to understand that. I think that is where I think we need more communication skills, and we need to explain that in the simplest of terms. And what does SO2 mean for the human health? I think what Sunil has presented, this is what we need to communicate, because there's a price being paid on a daily basis. And I think it's also somewhere down the line important to highlight that death is the worst case scenario. They are living dead, and so when we suffer the health consequence, it's about daily problems that happen. It's because of stunted growth. It is because of hypertension. It is because of diabetes. So each one of us are suffering as a result of this, and we need to address that. And ultimately, we, I think, need to also say, well, all our efforts to reduce pollution through all other means, whether through vehicle and all, will be undermined if we do go lax on this part. And this is where I think everything is possible, and we will get huge amount of gains by ensuring that the standards are formed. And it is the government's own standard. It's very important to highlight that it is something that the government came up on its own, and therefore it is for the government to implement it. And what the court and others are doing is only telling the government what it resolved to do on 7th of December 2017, which it seems to have forgotten. We need to remind them about that.
Thank you very much, and I hope and I strongly believe as well that there are enough journalists, sensitive journalists, and intelligent journalists in this, in this discussion, and they will take it, as you said, forward to communicate the problem. And the problem is not around Delhi and NCR only; it is across the country. It is in places like Korba and places like Sonbhadra. So please keep writing on these issues and keep enriching us. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot.